Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My guests are Bob Leavitt, Chief Human Capital Officer at the Department of Health and Human Services, and Jeffery Anoka, Deputy Chief Human Capital Officer for the Department of Health and Human Services. Bob and Jeff, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here with you.
So I wanted to start that on kind of a broader topic. We know that hiring in the federal government has really changed recently, just in the past couple of years. And so have the expectations of job applicants and employees. How has your approach to hiring at HHS changed with that, even just in the past couple of years or even in the past couple of months?
Great question. Over the past few years, flexibility has been absolutely critical for our ability to hire. Flexibility in terms of how we reach the talent pool, how we help strategically recruit, how we hire, and how we onboard staff. That flexibility has been extraordinarily important as we've been working in a hybrid environment. So the positive outcomes of that experience has been we have streamlined a lot of our workflows and processes for actually reaching out to, hiring, and onboarding staff and talent for the department. And it is those flexibilities that we seek to build on and enhance as we move forward so that we keep our attention on the employee, that employee perspective of their whole experience from the recruitment to the hiring to the onboarding process.
And when you talk about streamlining processes, what does that really look like? How do you make things a little bit smoother from the recruitment side of things?
So as an example, we have a fair number of recruiting events that take place, whether it's on-site, in person. Jeff himself was at an event in Florida just a few months ago. So we have plenty of in-person events. We also have plenty of remote events. And for the actual systems that staff use when they come on board, just as an example, we're trying to provide greater support for that full journey that the employee has in that candidate to the onboarding experience. And we've been piloting efforts, expanding efforts. Some of the components of the department are doing fairly well in this area. We're really seeking to make sure that we have that tangible system that can help guide candidates through the process, beginning to end.
If I could just add also to that, we are absolutely taking advantage of our shared certificates program. This is a program that allows for component A within HHS to post a job, and about 45 days later, other components within the department are able to take advantage of that certificate. That has positively impacted time to hire in the department, and managers find it as a useful way to be able to start the conversation around hiring. In addition to that, the notion of shared responsibility. So pulling the managers in early, having them talk about things like a job analysis, candidate profiles, that helps us create the vacancy announcements that allow for maximum use of our certificates. And one last point on that is the use of subject matter experts. As HR professionals, we are wonderful and super talented, but we don't always know what it takes to be an emergency room physician or a bedside nurse. And so being able to tap into subject matter experts to help drive those review of candidates, I think that has been very helpful as well. And we've streamlined those processes.
Okay. Can you give a couple examples of either shared certificates or with using SMEs in the hiring process? What components of HHS has that worked really well in, and maybe for what positions have you seen a lot of success there?
So just as an example, we as a department emphasize the use of shared certificates internal to the department, across the department. We also have very large components like the National Institute of Health that has really been a leader in large global recruitment processes within that component itself. It's a very large workforce. But in addition to that internal work, we also work externally with other departments and agencies. We're working very closely with GSA and other departments in areas of priority, mission critical occupations, whether it's acquisition or IT, where there's really a synergy in what we can all bring together. So we're relying on a few SMEs rather than doing separate processes. So again, if we look large, it's a team sport. Hiring is a team sport in government. We can all be working together, whether it's within a department or across the department. And it's those efforts have been extraordinarily helpful for us. as help create efficiencies in how quickly we can hire people and the right talent. So Jeff, feel free to add on with other detailed examples within.
A couple of other examples. So our Office of the Chief Information Officer, for example, they very heavily use subject matter experts. I think that, again, HR can get you to a point, but this shared responsibility, this co-creation with the Office of the CIO and them identifying the subject matter experts, I think that has really helped boost their candidate quality or their certificate quality. Our Office of the Assistant Secretary for Financial Resources, they are a recent user of a SME process, a subject matter expert process, as well as the multi-hurdle assessment process. They've coordinated with us and other parts of the organization to put forth written assignments or assessments that allow for the best candidates to rise to the top. So these are just two examples. We can rattle off a number of others in the department as well.
No, I like that. And Bob, I like what you said too about how hiring is a team sport, whether that's within HHS or more broadly across government as well. I think that was a really interesting comparison there.
That's something we emphasize a lot. It is a team sport. It is a shared responsibility, as Jeff said, a shared responsibility not just across an HR community, but also with the hiring managers and others in the operation. It's a shared responsibility. The success of hiring is critical for us to be working together on that.
Right. And it's not just, within the HR office itself, but using SMEs and others to kind of make the hiring process better, essentially. So I am curious, though, within using SMEs and that process there, or maybe with the shared certificates as well, do you ever run into challenges? Maybe SMEs don't have enough time or to dedicate towards helping out with hiring, or where do you see kind of barriers with using that process?
That's one of the challenges is the time, and that's a commonality for all of us at time. The urgency of ensuring we always have the right talent at the right time. It's great to have the hiring managers fully engaged as they should be. It's great to have SME, subject matter experts, fully engaged as they should be. But time, these folks are often helping to implement major projects and priorities. So time is one issue, and how we prioritize, how we coordinate to ensure that we can have the time for appropriate SME engagement and support. At the same time, it's our approach to shared hiring practices minimizes the unnecessary use of SMEs by creating a broader pool of hiring. So we rely on fewer SMEs in the process that can help really facilitate the process forward.
And I think just to add to what Bob has mentioned and the point that you made about time, our Administration for Children and Families, they are the ones that deal with the deployments of federal staff across the country to the border specifically. And there are also hiring managers that are serving in those capacities on the border. So it's very difficult to engage. But there are some steps, as Bob has mentioned, that we've taken to try to mitigate that. We found that it's very effective to use HR liaisons and partner with our organization, OHR, to ensure that messages are getting pushed out to our customers, that there's two-way dialogue. If there are things that we need to work on, we're able to meet those demands almost immediately. And so I think that building in some safeguards into the process helps. I would also say process, as we look at our process to see what things we can maybe modify. We've coordinated very effectively with our security office, for example, on a pilot that we're going to be launching to help streamline the onboarding process. So once a selection is made, that time between selection being made and enter on duty, we're looking at trying to bring that time down as well. And so we're aware that people are busy and we're all busy, but looking at chipping away at the process, I think will help us continue to move the dial on time to hire.
I want to go back to the process for how you select candidates and how you pick, who's a quality candidate, how you make that list in the first place. Are there, HHS is a huge department. You have tens of thousands of employees, and I'm sure just as many applicants for these positions that you have open. So what does that process look like for, picking who's right for the job?
Let me add to the context, then I'll give the fun, difficult part to Jeff. a department of approximately 90,000 employees with approximately 10 HR centers across the department. For example, many of the large operating divisions, the National Institute of Health, the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, the Food and Drug Administration, the Human Resources and Services Administration division have large HR operations in support of this large workforce. So first and foremost, we have an awesome team that supports the workforce. Approximately 1,265 HR professionals across the department supporting their missions, with many missions being unique and distinct, and many hiring authorities and processes being distinct under different titles of law in different processes for different purposes. So the complexity makes it all the more exciting. And it is in that context, bringing to bear new forms of assessment processes to ensure that we're really identifying and bringing on board the talent needed. Jeff?
Yeah. So thank you for the tee up. I think now the fun part. So the misnomer that people apply and it goes into a black hole, and maybe some computers are coming up with the suggestions on who gets to the hiring manager. Misnomer indeed. There are men and women, as Bob mentioned, about over 1,200 men and women dedicated to this mission across the department. When a person submits an application, it will go into our systems. We have either HR specialists who are certified to review and rank applicants based on the criteria that was put into the vacancy announcement, what's in their resume, and what answers they provided to the questions in the application. Someone is looking at that information and using that to determine whether or not the answers in the application were certified and should be moved forward to hiring managers for consideration. As we introduce other colleagues to the process, subject matter experts, the subject matter experts, prior to the announcement being posted, work with our HR teams to determine the criteria that they will be assessing against. And so it's not the case that, applications come in and we determine at that point what we want to assess against. No, it's done up front. Assessments are reviewed and validated and thumbs up to be used for the process. Those SMEs go through and they look at resumes and look at application, and they understand those terms that we may not understand, like in technology, COBOL and Python. Means nothing to me. It's metal and a snake. But I think that having a subject matter expert review that and understand that this language, though it doesn't end up in a 20-page federal resume, maybe a 1 or 2-page resume, is exactly the expertise that we need for the job. And so that is, in sum total, how we get from the point of an application to a list of qualified applicants or eligible applicants for selection.
Yeah, no, thank you. Even with that, just playing devil's advocate a little bit, I know that an open position for HHS probably gets a lot of resumes in for it. So if you're a hiring manager or you're the person who's looking at all of those resumes, do you have tools at your disposal where you're not just looking through every resume one by one? I'd imagine that would take a lot of time. So are there tools or technology that HHS uses to try to help that process along, make it more efficient?
So USA Staffing, now this is an opportunity to shout out our colleagues at at OPM. USA Staffing has come a long way to where it allows for us to search. The criteria is a lot better for us to be able to search through and call through resumes, to be able to identify the specific things in a resume that will stand out to a hiring manager. We're also exploring AI, the use of AI, just like everyone else. I think it's critical for us to be able to have the opportunity to load in some information that we can then have as a search criteria, and that it can feed us, resumes or information that come with that criteria. It doesn't mean that the human element is taken out of it. In fact, it calls for more use of the human element, but it gives us a chance to be able to streamline processes. We're also, we recognize that we get thousands of jobs applicants for each job that we post. And so we are exploring with things like application limits, because that will allow for us to bring those numbers into more reasonable, reasonable levels. All said, we want every candidate who is qualified for a job, who's interested in serving at HHS, to apply, and we will give them that level of review.
And just to add with regards to the work that the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, OPM, has been doing. So on the front side, there's USA Jobs. On the back side, there's USA Staffing, as Jeffrey mentioned. On both of those systems, there have been significant improvements over the past year and a half, and with significant improvements just rolling out as recent as this month and in May or so. Enhancements that allow the increased use of shared certificates, and as well as identifying technical specialties that are required. So this new functionality, whether it's for the candidate through USA Jobs and or for the HR professional on the back end for USA Staffing, is absolutely critical. And in addition to these enhancements, it's within the department, we also have Hire Now. Hire Now is our tool that can work in tandem increasingly with USA Staffing when it comes to shared certificates. And as you mentioned, the volume is significant. So at any one point, we have approximately 74,000 resumes available among shared certificates for approximately 3,300 positions advertised. And the hiring managers have the ability to go into the tool to identify what are the resumes immediately available under what type of solicitation. And they can also look to see, right now they can look and see the 500 solicitations that are about to come online, or the 100 that would be available in a couple of weeks' time. It's great visibility. And having that visibility in the tools and the ability to sort and filter by function, by position, by requirements, for them to have that flexibility means it's one more efficiency where folks don't have to start a whole new process. They can rely on a process that is underway.
So Jeff, earlier when you were speaking just a minute ago, you were talking about the just kind of testing or playing around with AI in the hiring process. Can you tell me a little bit more? What has that looked like, and where have you been using it at HHS?
Still very early. But to Bob's point earlier about Hire Now, we do have a robotic process automation tool that is able to go in and cull out some of the resumes and pull resumes from existing certificates into our system of the 74,000 resumes that Bob mentioned. And so that is something that we're starting to do now, but we are having conversations now about how we may be able to leverage AI to help with the development of position descriptions, for example, job analyses, and vacancy announcements at large. I think that any opportunity to bring technology into the process, whether it's on the back end or on the front end, videos of myself and or Bob or other colleagues in the agency to help encourage folks to come serve with us, I think that those are very useful tactics for us.
And for the robotic process automation that we have now, it's either attended or unattended bots that can perform that function of moving data from one place to another. Without that capability, we would not be able to manage 74,000 resumes in the system and to make it available to hiring managers. So that capability is absolutely critical. We also have a phenomenal CIO team that in our office of the CIO that is looking at all the types of features that could be explored when it comes to AI. Now, one thing we always like to remind ourselves is that it's always great for us to be watching out for the technology that's out there, that's available or might be available, to see how we could apply that. At the same time, we always have to recognize that there's going to be no enhancement unless we do the groundwork. And that often comes down to the basics, the foundational work of reimagining, rethinking workflows, simplifying workflows so that it can align with any new tool that we bring to market, in addition to the change management and the human-centered design of making sure that we have the appropriate interface with whether it's a customer or the HR professional. So it is all, there are no silver bullets out there. It's a lot of work, it helps, but we always have to go back to the basics of rethinking our workflows in many cases and keeping it human-centered.
So that groundwork, is that something that is going on right now that you guys are kind of looking through going through your process of recruitment and kind of figuring out where, are there areas to make things more efficient? Is that something you're working on right now?
Yes, we absolutely are. It's critical for us as we're competing with not just the hundreds of other federal agencies, but we're competing with the entire U.S. economy and global economy for that matter. At HHS, we can recruit anything from lawyers and doctors to pick another position that exists in the economy, and we have that at HHS. And for us, we've always got to be looking around the corner. And so our hiring processes, our deputy secretary has paid close attention to time to hire. And that focus on time to hire has allowed for us to consider efficiencies. With that backing from the boss, we're able to push the limits, push the boundaries quite a bit. So we're looking at our policies, we're looking at procedures, we're calling colleagues in to help us co-create the procedures and policies of the future. We're looking around every corner to see how we can improve in this space.
And it's thanks to that work, Jeff's team, phenomenal team of talent, has reduced time to hire by approximately 50%, with additional savings likely to come in the future. And those efficiencies are critical when there are candidates that really want to make a decision soon if they can proceed with their application process, if a job is on the other end, because they have other competing offers. So that time to hire is absolutely critical. And again, going back to that team sport, to that shared responsibility, we have great HR centers across the department, and we all can be learning from one another and are learning from one another about how we can all improve our processes.
I guess when you're looking at all of these different processes or ways to kind of speed things up, are there specific areas like mission critical occupations or other positions within HHS that you're particularly looking to hire at right now?
So, mission critical occupations, the agency needs every one of our 92,000 colleagues to function, but there are some positions that are critical to us being able to do our work. I think the figure is we are number one, number two, top 5 in the world for grant making, and that puts a big burden on our acquisition and grants workforce. We need them. We absolutely need talent in that space. We also need early career talent. We're a fairly mature organization, and so being able to build, to have that pipeline of next generation talent is critical for us. IT, every organization in the world has a need for IT if you're going to work in the space that's important and it has a web presence. And so we absolutely need them critically, and nurses. We operate a number of medical facilities across the country, and in order to be able to research and to manage these medical facilities, we need nurses and other frontline staff. And last but not least, not last, but one of our other mission critical occupations, data sciences and other social sciences. As we are an organization that provides medical support that save lives of folks here around the world. In order to do that, we need the folks to help us organize the data in such a way where it's useful, to help us build a case, to help us get that medicine to market. And so, yes, these are critical functions that we are really focused on. And we partner with our colleagues at the Office of Personnel Management for direct hire authorities to be able to engage this talent pool. We're also focusing on recruitment, strategic recruitment, not the post and pray of yesterday, but how do we engage a passive candidate that doesn't know that HHS is where they need to be? I was at a family function this past weekend and making a tough sell to an in-law that is a doctor, saying, hey, listen, you could be doing a whole host of other things in private industry, but taking a look at HHS is the right thing to do. And we were making that tough sell over dinner. And so bottom line is the partnering with OPM and our other colleagues across the agency to coordinate hiring efforts for these types of occupations, streamlining our policies and processes, and tapping into the use of technology to get in touch with people before they know they need to be in touch with us. I think those are some critical pushes that we've made around mission critical occupations.
And for the strategy behind that, so there's that urgency and the importance of hiring across mission critical occupations and many others, whereby we really have to establish that strategy, that talent strategy, to ensure that we're able to access and build the talent pool. So, for example, we have a phenomenal acquisitions team across the department, and we also have a great leadership of the department's chief acquisition officer, who's with her team has helped build out a acquisition strategy, a workforce acquisition strategy that helps, that we all work together on establishing what are the pathways for early career talent into acquisition? What is that broader strategic recruitment strategy, the hiring plan, and the development, learning and growth opportunities we need to provide? It's that strategic talent pool perspective with the shared voice across the department where we will be in a better place to make sure that we're not just attracting the talent, but once we onboard that talent, retaining the talent. Sure. And that's within the department. Across government, it's working with many of our colleagues on the cyber workforce working group, as an example, on the IT side, as well as with the tech to gov hiring efforts. So again, working together in support of hiring, particularly in these mission critical occupations, is key.
Yeah, no, it goes back to the analogy, you know, it's a team effort, right? So, yeah. And Jeff, I like what you mentioned earlier. You had just the example of talking to one in-law, trying to recruit them to HHS. So, you know, that's a good strategy, but it's just one person. So are there other ways that you all reach out to, you know, different communities? Do you go to college campuses, or how else are you trying to get in touch with these areas or positions that are really important to hire at HHS?
So, great question. I would say for us, our Assistant Secretary for Administration has really pressed us between us and OHR and our Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity and Inclusion to get out, identify the institution, minority serving institutions that we need to target. HHS, like most organizations, can do better as it relates to our diversity numbers. And I think, you know, there has been a real significant focus on engaging populations, minority serving institutions, tribal colleges, and other institutions where we could target candidates and encourage them to apply for opportunities with HHS. The beauty of being able to work in headquarters, but to look out upon a number of different organizations with brand names like FDA, CDC, NIH, CMS. These are all organizations that, you know, are three-letter acronyms, but they mean something to the society. And so being able to walk into a room and say that we work for this organization, it does help boost recruitment. So we have established partnerships with institutions across the country. We're continuing to expand in that space. We're also leveraging fellowships to bring in early career talent to the organization. This gives people exposure to the organization. In addition to the fellowship, we utilize the Federal Pathways Program, the internship programs that allow for us to bring on hundreds of interns annually to the agency, giving them that exposure to the organization and ultimately putting us in a position to bring them on permanently once done. A recent example, our Administration, again, for Children and Families, ACF, they did a targeted recruitment effort where they aimed to hire about 50 or so interns for the summer. They were able to do that. They hired the 50, they brought them on, and we're finding now that a number of these interns, the organization wants to extend or even make permanent number of these interns. And so that is the way that we will want to operate this. I think Bob mentioned earlier that we do in-person recruitment events, and we also tap into virtual events. We hosted a virtual event in the spring that brought in about 3,000 folks to learn about the organization. We had folks from various components talking to candidates about opportunities within the agency and what we do at large. And so we are taking a multifaceted approach to engaging. That's all as we are building out our corporate recruitment function. And so in a year's time, we see that our strategy will be a lot more advanced, and we will be focusing on new areas.
And just examples, some of the outreach that took place recently, some of which that Jeff participated in, is in network of universities and organizations in Florida, in California. We have a leadership team going to Montana next week. And in a couple weeks later, we have a leadership team going to Alabama to visit a network of universities. So it is active engagement and partnerships.
So it sounds like a lot of it is, right now, outreach and trying to get the word out. HHS is hiring. Have you seen any of those efforts kind of translate into numbers when you hired at HHS? I guess, are you seeing more diverse applicants, more diverse, people coming into these positions, or is that something that you're hoping to reach down the road?
More something we're hoping to continue to reach down the road. So I mentioned the ACF example, very fresh, but it is something that has resulted in hires. The spring career event has resulted in hires. And, as we continue to review the returns of this, we'll be able to have more information on that. But we continue to push the envelope on outreach, engagement, making sure that we're targeting institutions that normally we haven't engaged, making sure that we are giving consideration to how that outreach and effort aligns with our mission critical occupations. We always have a need for them. Let's go everywhere to try to get that filled.
And the timelines for seeing those outcomes vary by the target group. For example, as Jeff mentioned, if it's really engaging early career talent, if we're going to undergraduate or graduate programs, we may be seeing an uptick in the internship programs. We may be seeing a uptick in application processes for positions down the line. It depends on where people are in their career as a part of the target community. To give a separate example, we also had a specialized event for military spouses. And that target event, these are professionals in their career who may be moving around the country every few years or so. And it is through those targeted efforts, we had an immediate uptick in the actual hiring. So when people are immediately career ready to go and flexible with the workplace flexibilities of being able to work remotely, in these cases of military spouses as an example, we're able to see that uptick. So we had a 33% increase in the number of military spouses, individuals hired under special authorities in the department just from this engagement.
So just a few minutes ago, we were talking about the Pathways program, early career hiring, and interestingly, I like that you guys brought it up because OPM just had these proposed regulations to broaden eligibility for the Pathways program and other ways to kind of revamp that. So do you see that or other ways that the government is kind of shifting its viewpoint or shifting its strategies for early career hiring? Is that something that you see either government-wide or at HHS specifically?
Great question on Pathways. I think the organization, HHS, is a critical user of Pathways. And I mentioned before that we are a mature workforce and there's a need for us to identify next generation talent. We absolutely find it to be critical that these refinements are being made around the Pathways program. And so for us, any opportunity to co-create on these policies, we had a chance to review them. We had a chance to push these out to our colleagues across the department. Any chance that we have to engage in how we develop these programs across government, I think is a helpful opportunity for us.
And it's another great example of how active the Office of Personnel Management has been. It's not just in the IT side in strengthening USA Jobs and USA Staffing. It's also in the hiring practices and policies and approaches. And that coordination and that shared voice across the CHCO community the voice with the Chief Human Capital Officers and the CHCO Council with OPM has been extraordinarily helpful for us all to move ahead in areas of shared priority and importance. So this is one particular area where we hear the need ourselves within our department, the importance of early career talent and ensuring that the programs are as strong as they can be, and across the CHCO community.
And Bob, you are a member of the CHCO Council, and there are all these different strategies, many of which we've talked about, skills-based hiring, shared certificates, using SMEs in the hiring process. Is there anything else that the CHCO Council more recently has been talking about, hiring strategies forward-looking for the future?
It's moving to the future. It's really about consolidating a lot of the gains thus far, moving ahead with our shared priorities in terms of where do we need greater flexibility in the hiring authorities, which in some cases may require legislative fixes, and or in some cases are more administrative regulatory that OPM can manage. So overall, we have had a shared effort in identifying the most important areas, one of them being the example of the pathways and early career talent. Others is access at times when needed to direct hire authorities, which we've had a fair amount of support from OPM in those areas. So it's the ability and the flexibility to hire the staff that you need at a particular time in response to an emerging requirement, perhaps. So that's really been a lot of the where the attention has been.
One other thing to add to that is the 10-year term. That was a new thing that OPM, the CHCO Council worked on with OPM and especially around the STEM positions, any opportunities that we can use to attract STEM talent. In a previous organization, we did a hiring surge focused on STEM talent, and in engaging this population, we found that a fair number of them didn't want the forever job. They wanted the mission focus. I need to fix this. I need to do this, get in and get out. And the 10-year term gives us the opportunity to bring talent in that can get in and focus on a specific task and then move on.
And in terms of broader talent types of efforts, it's what OPM is doing and with the CHCO Council to advance elevating federal HR, strengthening and supporting the federal HR workforce. Also supporting the data community across government, strengthening data standards and strategic approach to data and visualization of data, including for talent analytics. And as we said before, for IT hiring, ensuring that we have the cyber workforce that is needed for government, and that we're also increasing opportunities for that private sector to public sector back and forth as appropriate, that tech to gov hiring.
When HHS is hiring for specific types of positions, whether it be IT, acquisition, HR, the ones that you guys kind of pointed out as some of the areas that you're specifically looking at hiring towards, you also have the challenge of you're facing the broader economy, the broader job marketplace. How does HHS set itself apart from private sector employment? And, how do you try to push forward on, this is why you should join HHS, or this is why you should apply for a job with HHS?
Great question. First and foremost, we'd emphasize that just the honor and the value of public service is phenomenal. We're advancing missions in a variety of missions, whether it's across departments or within our own department, of varying missions. We are advancing missions in support of the American people. And that is extraordinary honor and that responsibility to do the work that we have the opportunity to do. Within the department, what we like to do is the Department of Health and Human Services. We really want to make sure that we're really creating that workplace, that work environment that reflects our mission of service and our mission of health, well-being, and service. And just as an example, looking online or Googling for the U.S. Surgeon General's framework for workplace mental health and well-being, great document, really gets to the importance of engagement, the importance of learning and growth, flexibility and autonomy. It's really creating that broader environment, that work environment that really helps create and sustain performance. So it's really creating that lived experience within the department, developing a solid workforce and a solid workplace.
Just one add, when I speak to folks about HHS, I always say we save lives. Being a part of an organization that gets to save lives of billions of folks around the world, I think just is a humbling thing to come to work to do every day. And I'd love to share this opportunity of service with others. And so just understanding that we save lives, I think that is a unique value proposition, a unique selling point for us. And it's pretty easy. I mean, you turn on the TV, you see a commercial about 988 for folks that may have a mental health emergency and being able to do that. Well, that's HHS. You look on the television and you see where there's a situation of medicine being reviewed or new cutting edge treatments being developed. It gets either developed in one of our labs and definitely approved by our Food and Drug Administration. And so bottom line is we have an awesome organization, an awesome mission. We get to save lives.
And, I think that in our conversation today, we've covered a lot of ground in different, ways to make the hiring process more efficient, ways to broaden applicant pools, all these different strategies to improve hiring and look at hiring in a different way moving forward. But a lot of that work also falls back on the HR workforce itself within HHS or whatever agency it is. So are there ways that you try to support the HR workforce, or how do you try to, engage that specific sector of HHS to make sure that recruitment on the end looks the way that you guys are hoping it does?
Great question. I'll start off taking a broad view first. When we have our regular meetings or biweekly meetings with all of the HR directors and HR teams across the department, or internal looking, or whether we are meeting with the CHCO Council or many of the working groups with OPM, HR professional across government. Inside of HHS and across government, it's amazing to hear everything that is taking place and all of the work that has taken place over the past few years, quickly shifting during the pandemic to remote hiring, creating new systems and approaches from scratch, new authorities, new technology being brought to bear. The HR workforce across government has done an extraordinary job in helping to keep us all moving forward in delivering our mission for the country. And it's with that we have great gratitude on a daily basis of how we see people serving. So HR cadre, public sector, as well as in private sector, has done an extraordinary job moving us forward through the pandemic and into the future. And it's also our responsibility to be supporting and investing in our HR workforce, our federal HR workforce, whether it is through, just as we said in the Surgeon General's framework, advancing the learning and growth, advancing the professional development opportunities. We have to be supporting and investing in the workforce that helps move forward our mission.
And just to add to what Bob mentioned, just an immense amount of gratitude for the workforce. This is a profession that I've loved for years, and it is thankless work, but I'm here to thank our HR colleagues with Bob here at HHS and across federal service.
Well, Bob, Jeff, thank you so much. I think this has been a really engaging, really great conversation, so thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Bob Leavitt is the Chief Human Capital Officer for the Department of Health and Human Services, and Jeffrey Anoka is the Deputy Chief Human Capital Officer for the Department of Health and Human Services. I'm your moderator, Drew Friedman, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on Workplace Reimagined.